You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Nah, I'm just screwing with you. My voice isn't back, but it's not that bad anymore. That's where I was last Monday. This is Hot Takes, where I talk about things that are firing me up in the comic book industry. We're going to do something a little different from now on the show. So be sure to tune in and check out the new format with this show. And we're going to talk, we're going to tell you two stories tonight. One of them is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And one of them is definitely not about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The other thing is about comic book math. Right? Sounds like two super exciting topics. So if you're tuning in live, you can call in the second segment. If you're watching this on the repeat, hop in the comments. Tell me what you're thinking about what I'm talking about. But because I'm already choking on my own existence, let's play the intro and we'll get right into it. What's up, the internet? Welcome into Hot Takes. I almost couldn't remember what the name of my show was. That's what happens when I take a week off. Thank you for those of you who reached out after I was not here last week going, hey man, you all right? Turns out, no, I had the COVID, which was not fun, but it did give me an opportunity to sit at home and watch Barney Miller. So there's that. I want to thank Jenna for filling in for me last week, going long. Jay for covering for me on other things. I really missed you guys. I really missed being here. We're going to do something new with this show starting tonight. Since I started this show, the idea has been for you all to be able to call in and talk to me about the things that I talk about on the show. But I've been relying primarily on comic book news to influence what I talk about, rather than the things that have me pumped up in the industry. And that's going to change. It's not fair of you guys just to hear me regurgitate the news and then come back tomorrow and hear Dan regurgitate the news, and me to ask you to call in and talk about the news and then ask you to comment tomorrow on Dan's show. So we're going to do something different. We're going to talk about something that I care about. And so we're going to start with a story. As you guys may know, not last week, but the week before, I went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for Comics Pro, which is Comics Pro is like the trade organization for comic book retailers. It's comics professional retail organization. So you have to be a comic book shop owner, a comic book retailer to be a member. And it, unlike Diamond Retailer Summit and other things in that vein, is the most direct way that publishers, creators, distributors, people who are essentially upstream from comic book retailers can talk to retailers about their products and their services and stuff so that we can downstream them to you. Now, that's a fancy way of saying they're the people who we get our stuff from before we sell it to you. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Pittsburgh, though, this gathering was the first time we've had this meeting since pre-pandemic, at least in person. They did a great job during the pandemic of having the meetings virtually, but this was the first time this meeting has happened since the pandemic. It's a big, important meeting, and Dan and myself and Miss Jen and other people are going to spend some time, especially this week, breaking down kind of what we learned. But that's not what we're going to talk about tonight. Hopefully I can talk about it before my voice gives out. I'm going to tell you two stories, both of which are related to Retailer Summit, but aren't actually related to Retailer Summit. Or Comics Pro, I should say. One of the big fun events at Comics Pro is they rent a bus. Now, if you've ever been to Pittsburgh, you know that the streets are narrow and there are a ton of people. And like there was like a BTS concert, there was some big concert there while we were there, and the Pittsburgh Penguins were in town. Like it was crowded. But they rent this big 60-seat tour bus and they put us all on the bus and they take us to local comic shops in Pittsburgh so we can see the local comic shops. And so we went to one called Ides Entertainment, which was 4 stories. The basement was all back issues. The second story was DVDs and that kind of media. The third story was records. And the fourth story was where they keep the new books. Wild. Absolutely crazy store. We went to a couple of other stores, one called the Phantom of the Attic. We went to a record store. And then our last stop was a place called New Dimensions Comics. New Dimensions is owned by a guy named Todd. Todd puts on Steel City Comic Con. He is the promoter of the local comic book convention. And the location of Todd's store that we visited is in a former Best Buy. If it gives you any idea how big and how wild this store was, right? This was a huge location. And I'm that guy that when I go to a store, I don't like to go to a comic shop and not buy something. I feel like if you're going to open your doors and you're going to let me in, I should at least walk out with something. A couple of back issues, whatever. And so we get to Todd's shop and I walk in, and on the wall behind the counter was this guy. It's a book that I didn't already own, except that I did, but I didn't own this version and I wanted it. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Krang Special #1. This is the second printing wraparound cover. I have the book. Believe me, I have the book. I have a ton. I probably have 3 or 4 of the first printing. Don't have any of the second printing. So I had to buy the book. But Todd had a price on it that when I looked at the condition felt a little high. And so I went up to Miss Jen and I went to my friend Amanda and I talked to other people because I was really conflicted looking at this book. It had spine stress and it had corner dings and it had color break and it had all of these things that make it a lower grade copy than I wanted, at least for the price Todd was asking. So I hemmed and hawed the whole time we were there. I fought and fought and fought because I believe, and this is going to be the central premise of this show, that you don't haggle with your local comic shop. I think it's in bad taste. I don't think you haggle with your local comic shop. I think if your local comic shop is asking a price for something and it's something you want, you buy it. And part of that comes from being a retailer and knowing how tight things get. But I don't like to negotiate. I don't like to haggle with these guys. But I really wanted the book and I wanted to buy something, and it was a few dollars more than I wanted to spend. And so I hem and haw and I fight myself into it, talk myself into it, go up to the counter and say, okay, I'm going to take the Krang book, but could you do it for $5 less than what you have on it? And the guy goes, actually, I'm going to give you 25% off anyway. So now I feel like an absolute schmuck. I didn't know they were going to give me a discount anyway for being at Comics Pro. I didn't know that they were going to take care of me like that. I don't feel like they should have had to. I didn't expect it, but it was generous of them to do. But they did it anyway after I asked them to already better their price, which, as I just discussed with you, is not something I'm comfortable doing. It's not something I feel like we should be doing. So they gave me a discount on this book to the tune of almost $10, which is more than the discount I wanted. I took it. Don't get me wrong. If you're going to give me a discount, I'm going to take it. I'm not a monster. But it made me feel guilty asking for a discount when they were planning to give me one anyway. And even if they weren't planning to give me one anyway, I still felt guilty asking for a discount. It's not something that, like I said, it's not something I feel like you should be doing. These guys are not marking these books up so much beyond market value most of the time that it's an unreasonable ask. I felt like this book was maybe worth $40 and they were asking $45. I wasn't asking for a big discount, a couple of bucks. They gave me a bigger discount than I was asking for, but after I asked, now they're giving me one bigger and I feel bad. That's the first story. I bought the book, by the way. While we were at Comics Pro, one of the presenters was Diamond Comics Retailers. Diamond Comics Distributors. Anybody who knows anything about the comic book industry knows that Diamond is the biggest distributor, or had been the biggest distributor, had been the only distributor of comic book periodicals for the longest time. Up until the pandemic, when DC split off and started working with Lunar Distribution, the only place you could go was Diamond. Diamond was inevitable. Excuse me. That's much better. Diamond was inevitable. And there are certain costs in this business that are inevitable. Shipping is one of them. Bags and boards, long and short boxes, lights, gas, heat, electricity to run your store, credit card processing fees. All of these things are inevitable. So you just accept the terms Diamond gives you and you move on, rather than really thinking about what those terms are. Diamond announced at retailers or at Comics Pro that starting soon, comic book stores were going to be getting a 20% discount on their shipping, which is huge because in comic shops right now, one of the biggest costs outside of new product is the cost to get the product to the store. Shipping is a huge part of the cost of new comics, the cost of new product altogether, but especially from Diamond, the cost of new comics. So Diamond announces this 20% discount starting very soon. And then that later in the year, they'll be giving an additional 20%. Now, when other distributors talked about changing their shipping rates and discounting their shipping rates, they talked about, we've negotiated with the carriers, we've negotiated with FedEx, we've negotiated with UPS to get better rates for you. Diamond didn't do that. Oh, I was going to put this up, Diamond, in case you need the logo. Diamond announced that they were closing offices, moving to a central location. They were taking cost-cutting measures on their end of the business to save retailers money. That means that Diamond has been charging you extra in your shipping to cover their operational costs. Sorry, guys. This cough is going to be a problem. I can just feel it. Diamond has been charging extra in their shipping to cover operation costs. And so by cutting their operation costs and letting people save on shipping, that means that Diamond has been charging extra on an unavoidable cost. Shipping is not something you can opt out of, right? You have to pay shipping. They have to send you your books. Shipping is not something you can opt out of. It's not like it's a service you're choosing to participate in, and therefore by marking it up, Diamond can make its money and you can choose whether or not you want to pay into that. No, they were charging extra on shipping, which is something that retailers were just saddled with. There was nothing they could do. To the tune of at least 40%, which granted, they're now announcing that they're giving that back. But for how long has shipping from Diamond been 40% too high? We don't really know the answer to that question. So now, those of you who have been with me from the beginning of this show, who have heard the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles story, who have heard the Diamond shipping story, are wanting to know, Kyle, what the hell do these two things have to do with each other? I'm going to tell you. Both of these things are stories about someone, be it me, be it Diamond, taking money out of the till from your local comic shop, making it harder for that comic shop to pay its bills, making it harder for that comic shop owner to feed their family, making it harder for them to pay their employees, making it harder for them to order new product, making it harder for them to keep the lights on, making it harder for them to get you the things that you want. Doesn't seem like a lot, asking for a few dollar difference, asking for a few dollar discount on a book. Doesn't seem like a lot in the moment. Doesn't seem like a lot charging a few extra % for shipping to help cover and offset your operational costs. But when you add it all together, it creates this cascading effect that means comic shops have less money to operate and do the things that we count on comic shops to do. So we're going to take our first break here in a second. And when we come back from that break, I'm going to break down this math and give you numbers. I'm going to give you an opportunity to call and weigh in on this conversation. I'll reset the room. I'll kind of tell the story again, just so those of you who are joining later can have heard the stories. But we're going to talk about this. Where is the line here? What's a reasonable cost and what's an unreasonable cost? But first, before we do that, I want to tell you guys, here at The Experience, we've been working really hard for a really long time to grow our channel, to get more viewers on the channel. My voice sounding like this does not help. I get it. But we've been working really hard for a really long time to grow our channel. We're so close to 1,500 subscribers on YouTube. So if you don't already, head over to our YouTube channel, click subscribe, and click the bell. When we get to 1,500, our friends over at Dynamic Forces have donated some graded comic books. Every show is going to have the opportunity to give away graded comics to viewers of that show when we get to 1,500 subscribers. So if you haven't, during the commercial, head over to YouTube, click subscribe. If you have already, hit that share button. Just because you're watching on YouTube doesn't mean you can't throw that video on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Tell your friends where you're at, what you're doing. Tell them to come listen to the frog sounding boy. It'll be interesting. We'll be right back after these messages.
You just finished the last episode of your favorite news show, and you just have to talk about it. But all your friends are ghosting you because of that incident last week at the buffet. Oh, you know the one. What you did to that chowder. Ugh. Keeps me up at night. So what do? Join writer Dan Wickline as he breaks down all your favorite pop culture media. Whether it's a review of the latest nerdy TV show or a dive back into the history of your favorite comic characters, Dan's ready to discuss all the hottest topics live. Join the conversation as Dan live streams Tuesday through Thursday at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. The Dan Wickline Show on The Experience. Comic culture and sales.
You know how when you go to Comic-Con, after Comic-Con, you go to the hotel bar, and there's a whole bunch of people playing music and dancing, and you've got Pikachu and Lara Croft Tomb Raider doing the cha-cha slide just down from Deadpool and Batman and Wonder Woman? That's every Saturday night over on the Experience Twitch channel. Join Taji Beats for the EXP Dance Party, exclusively on Twitch, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Did you know that every experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out, twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. This is Hot Takes. I've had a cough drop. I sound better. Not great, but better. Thank you, Jay, for running that break. Thank you to Andrew Stanton for the song Emerald Weekend, which is our opener. Guys, tomorrow, me, Jay, Dan, hopefully I'll sound better, in stores this week, followed by Minute to Skim It, talking about new books that are in store this week. It's tomorrow night at 6 and 7 Eastern here on The Experience. Tune in for those. What's up to Kenneth and Nick and Jenna and anybody else who's watching? Say hi in the comments. Let me know you're here. If you want to get in on this topic, give me a call. Okay? You can call in 567-318-6507. 567-318-6507. We could talk about this topic. So for anybody who's joining late, I told a story during the first segment about picking up the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Krang one-shot, second printing. And in that second printing was the guy I was buying it from was asking a few dollars more for this book than I wanted to spend. So I asked for a discount, which is not something I ever do. It's not something I feel like you should do. And that guy actually wanted to give me a bigger discount than I had asked for, which is a part of it, but it still made me feel guilty. And then we talked about Diamond Comics distributors charging at least 40% markup on shipping, an unavoidable cost in the comic book industry. So let's break these numbers down. Okay? I bought the Krang second printing. I was given almost a $10 discount on this book. That's $10 less that retailer could have made than if I would have just shut up and paid the money. Now, granted, as we talked about, that retailer was already going to give me a discount anyway as part of the group from Comics Pro. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't asking it. It was generous, but that's beside the point. I asked for a $5 discount. That's $5 or $10 that retailer could have had in their hand to go spend on something else. Diamond charging 40% markup on shipping equates to X number of hundreds of dollars a month that retailer could have for other things. I've talked to Brainy, who is Taji Beats from the dance party, about his Diamond invoice at his store, and sometimes his shipping cost is higher than his invoice cost. Imagine going to the grocery store, buying a gallon of milk for $2, and them telling you that to carry it out of the store, you have to pay them $4. That's what Diamond is doing sometimes to cover their own operational costs. No costs that you can absorb, their own operational costs. 40% at least. I don't understand a world in which someone who is supposed to be a partner is gouging you on an unavoidable cost, right? If I sign up for a thing from Diamond, like say day early shipping or comic shop locator or something to this effect, where it's a service that I've opted into and you want to charge me for that and use that money to offset your operational cost, that's something I've opted into and I'm letting you set the price on. But no, instead of putting that cost on something that I can opt out of or opt into, you're putting it on an unavoidable cost, an inevitable cost. An inevitable cost, by the way, that has to be paid before other things. It's not like you can get your product and then pay shipping later. You have to pay your shipping when you get your product. It's not like it's a cost that you can earn back, even if you're on terms with Diamond. Right? Even if you're not paying for your invoice this week, you're paying for it in 2 weeks, you're on 14-day terms, you're still paying your shipping. Still an unavoidable cost. And so it asks this question: what level is too much? When you're dealing with your local comic shop, how much can you expect the local comic shop to give back? Diamond was saying it's at least 40% because they're attaching this 40% onto an unavoidable cost. I, in the case of my Krang book, was saying, oh, well, it's $5. I think your price is $5 too high. I don't think this book is graded that high, is graded that value. That number is different for everyone and in every situation. But at the end of the day, and this is why I say you shouldn't negotiate with your local comic shop, you shouldn't haggle with your local comic shop, is all of that money is directly related to money that your local comic shop has in its till, has in its bank account, and has for its staff and employees. So what amount is too much? Where do you draw the line? And I'm asking you, I'm not asking some big philosophical question. I'm asking you to call me right now. 567-318-6507. Jay, put the number at the bottom. 567-318-6507. And tell me, when you go into your local comic shop, is it 10%? Is it $2? Is it $5? Where do you draw that line when you say, you know what, I think you can give back to me? And all this has done is change the way that I shop in local comic shops now. That's all this whole thing has done. When I go into a local comic shop now, instead of thinking, gee, I'm looking to support this local comic shop, it's what can I buy to put money in their pocket? What can I spend? What can I afford on my budget to spend to put money in this person's pocket? And what I mean by that is this, right? Like, there is a number, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should never negotiate, you should never haggle. Sometimes you have to, because you have to eat too. But what is that line? Is it if you're more than $5 apart, you just don't buy the thing? Is it if you're more than $50 apart? Is it if you're more than 10% apart? So when I go into my local comic shop now, I'm looking at what do I have in my budget? What can I give to you? And that's what I'm looking to shop with. The idea of haggling is a sacred one in this country. It really is. I mean, so much so that they wrote it into A Christmas Story. If you don't remember, the dad haggles with the guy over the price of a Christmas tree. And the difference is, I'll throw in the string and tie it to your car for you. People think haggling is sacred. Jenna's calling me. Hold on, Jenna. I have to put you on the air.
Okay.
Okay, go.
Hey, it's Jenna. Hi, guys.
Jay, can you hear Jenna?
So, with the whole topic of, every little thing, like asking for discounts at small stores a lot of times, especially like at our store, we have it for the cover price plus 25 cents at most, right? And so it does get harder and harder to try and give back as much as we can.
Right. So when you look at your budget, right? Because the answer is a budgetary one.
Yeah.
Is it if something is, and this is the question I just asked, so you were probably calling in and didn't hear. When something is $5 more than you can afford in your budget, because you got to eat too.
Yeah.
Is your practice just to not buy the thing? Or would you say, hey,
Well,
can you help me out on this? And I can give you a little money and I can still eat.
so I guess it sometimes depends. Like if they are able to do it, depending on like what is the price point. Like if it's under a certain amount, then there's no way for the store to make money back to even break even on that product,
Sure.
on like that thing.
A cover price comic is not something you should ever negotiate on. I don't think we're arguing about that.
Oh, no.
Right? Especially if it's cover price plus 25% for a bag and board or whatever. But
yeah,
we're talking about when you find a book like my Krang special second printing,
yeah,
that is it's a higher end book. It's something that you want. It's something that you need for your collection. What is your line?
it really does.
Line?
It really does depend. Like those higher end books that are over a certain price point, you've got to look at it because like our store is consignment, so we can't do deals on those. But if it's like one of our books, a lot of times we are willing to negotiate with those.
Right. So, Jenna, when somebody comes into the store and you're going to ring them out,
yeah,
and they go, "Is there anything you can do on this?" What is your first thought?
My first thought is we already have certain discounts set up. So it's like, are you a vet? Are you this or are you that? Well, then we can try and figure it out.
Okay. But say they're nobody. They're just somebody who's like, I think your price is 10% too high here.
Yeah.
What do you do?
So the next thing that we would talk about is, so personally, what I would do is like, you can always send a message to our owner, or, if you add this, or if you add that, like if you add bags and boards, or if you add a thing, then yeah, we could definitely do kind of like a discount or a something on there.
So, see, that's interesting. But I guess my question is, again, it goes back to my question.
Yeah.
Is where is the line for you? At what point when somebody comes to you and you're standing at the counter and they say, "Hey, you've got this book for 45. I think it's worth 40. Would you take 40 for it?"
That does seem fair. Yeah.
That's a thing. But at one point, that's $5 that in your store, if you're charging 25 cents for a bag and board,
yeah,
right? That's 20 bags and boards.
Yeah.
That now you can't buy because I took my $5.
But we also gained a profit from that $40 rather than having it just sit on the shelf.
So you're talking about a dollar in my hand is worth more than $2 down the road.
Well, that dollar in the hand is guaranteed in my hand versus that $2 is a maybe someday.
Sure. And that's part of the calculus you have to do, right? As a store owner
Exactly.
and as a store clerk, you have to play this game of, is it worth it for me to take the hit now to make this person happy? And then later on down the road, that person will come and buy more and I'll make that money back? Or is there a, because there's a second part to my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle story, and I'll tell it with you on the phone, Jenna, if you give me a second. But is there is there a line at which it's a bridge too far? So here's the second part to my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle story. I buy that book. He takes it down off the shelf. And as I'm checking out, I see another Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle book. It's a cover I don't have. It's a Mega Bloks variant. Never seen it before.
Okay.
So I bought it. Well, that book was another $10, which was the exact amount of the discount he had given me. And then that guy, then he gives me a discount on that book. So what did I do?
Oh.
I bought a friend's keychain because now I have a keychain that's the turkey that Monica puts on her head in that one Thanksgiving episode. I just kept buying stuff until I wound up actually spending more than I had planned because they kept giving me this discount.
Yeah.
So Todd actually made more money off of me than he would have if he'd have just given me the $5 discount that I originally asked for. So in this case, the calculus worked out for him. But Jenna, tell me this: how often is that the case? When you give somebody a discount,
well, in our store,
next week?
Oh gosh, not a whole lot of people ask for it, but in the years, a few years that I've been there, the like handful of times that somebody has asked, and we have done something, they have bought more, or they've come back later, or they've brought friends. So it's kind of a $1 now, $2 next time, $3 the next time. So it builds up.
Sure. And that's part of what we're trying to figure out here, right? Like, why should I, the question I wanted to ask is, who am I to think that I could take money out of the pocket of a retailer? But what you're saying here, and this is a valid point, is that sometimes giving someone a little bit back equals a whole lot more in the end. Ed says, most places don't put bargaining into the price, or don't most places put bargaining into the price knowing someone is probably going to try to bargain with you at the counter. In other words, you price it 100 hoping you'll get 85. No. Sometimes you do, Ed. And we could talk about that in a second. I don't want to keep Jenna on the phone. She can call back if she wants, but because I know she's probably trying to drive home. And Jay's like, I need Jenna to drive home so that I can have dinner when she gets home because I've been on the air all day. So, like, this is a thing. But I want to thank you, Jenna, for calling in. And I'm going to talk to Ed's thing. And if you get home and if you want to call back in, call in. And we'll talk.
I've got you on my headphones sitting outside anyways.
Well, there you go. All right. So I'm going to let you go and I'm going to talk to Ed's thing and you can call back in.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Okay. So Ed, sometimes, but not always, right? This is a thing most people think. Don't places put bargaining into the price. That's a used car dealer thing, right? You buy my used car for $600, you put it on the lot for $1,000 and you want to get 800, right? That's a Pawn Stars thing. Or a History Channel American Pickers thing. That's not a thing for a lot of comic shops because what you're doing when you buy a book is you're saying, okay, I bought this book for X dollars. This is my operational cost to go into selling this book is X dollars. So I have to get X dollars for this book. So on a new book, on a $5, $4.99 comic, most retailers are paying $2.50. Then they're adding a percentage of shipping, which brings it up to, we'll call it $2.75. Now you're throwing a bag and board on it, which we just established when talking to Jenna is 25 cents. So that is $3 on a $5 book. That means there's $2 left over on a $5 book. Now, if I have to pay my staff $15 an hour at $2 a book, my staff has to sell at least 8 books an hour to even justify their existence. But I also have to pay electricity, gas, rent, other utilities, if I have more than one staff. So all of a sudden, the number of books per hour I have to sell go up. And my margin comes way, 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 way down. My profit comes way, 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 way down. So now my staff, instead of having to sell 8 books an hour just to cover their own costs, to cover all the costs, have to sell 100 books an hour. I don't know a lot of comic shops that are selling 100 books an hour, every hour of every day. So where they make that money up is in items where there's a better margin. So old books, collections that come in. Toys are actually a worse margin. Funko Pops are a worse margin. A lot of this other stuff is actually a worse profit margin. Right, Ed, I'm getting there. I'm getting to you, man. But I have to paint the whole picture, right? So on older books, you can get them cheaper. And on key books, you can get them cheaper. And you can sell them for more, conceivably. But the problem is that people know what those books are worth. So you have to pay what people feel like is a fair asking price. Variance and ratios aren't actually a better margin, Jenna, unless you're marking up the variance and ratios. So we're going to pretend those don't exist, because now we're talking about markup on top of rather than just fixed cost model. So when you have your fixed cost model, right, that's what we're talking about. So you buy a TMNT #1. And I'm using that because it's a book that I regularly price. TMNT or let's even do an easier book that everyone has seen. Amazing Spider-Man 300. That's a book that routinely right now is going for between $300 and $500, depending on condition. Maybe more if it's graded. So somebody comes in and wants to sell you that book. You're not going to be able, they're likely going to know what that book is worth. So you have to make them what they feel like is a fair market offer. So if they know that book is worth $300 and you know that book is worth $300, they want to get as close to $300 as you can get. So I have to say to them, well, I can give you $250 because the most I'm going to get is $300. I'm only going to make $50. Or you can say, or you can play the Pawn Stars game. I'll offer you half or 40% or whatever. And then you have to negotiate. So now you're spending time on that book. You're spending capital on the book. The $300 you lay out for one book is now another $300 you don't have in your pocket. It's another cost. And you don't know how fast you're going to sell that book at $350 or $400 or $500. Very seldom can you make somebody an offer on a key book and pay half. It's why stores like Miss Jen's do consignment, right? It's a much better deal. It's a look, we'll sell your book for market value. You get 60, we get 40, or you get 70, we get 30, whatever that percentage is. You have this conversation with your seller. So consignment is another way that you can change those ratios, but not everybody does consignment. So somebody comes into me with an ASM 300 and I have to pay them $300 because I think it's worth $500. They think it's worth $300. I give them their $300. Now I put $500 on it because I think that's fair market value. I have $200 to mess with. If I get that $200 back, I've made $200 profit. Is that enough to cover for all of the other costs associated with losing money on other things? No. So when somebody comes into me and asks me for a discount on that book, sure, I can cut in my profit, but it's actually taking money out of my pocket that goes to paying for new books, not just old books. Every dime goes into one pot, right? Everything is coming out of one bank account. So at the end of the day, anytime I get a discount or give back to a consumer that doesn't result in me making more money in the long run, I'm just limiting my ability to make money in the future. So again, when we're talking about keys, is there more room to play? Absolutely. But when you play on keys, you really are, in a sense, just lowering your profit margin on other things. If I lower my profit margin on something where I have a lot of profit margin, it's actually taking money away from something where I have a fixed profit margin. So my profit margin on a new book might be 20% by the time everything's all said and done. I get 20 cents out of a $10 book, or $2 out of a $10 book, just to keep the math round. Well, if I give $100 off of a book, off of a key, that just means I have to sell 50 new books to make up that difference. And if I was counting on that $100 difference to make up for the money I'm already losing on my new books, now I'm just out $100. See, I think that's why this bothers me, and that's why I want to talk about this. That's why it's got me hot and bothered that Diamond is charging markup on shipping, on an unavoidable cost. Because it all trickles down. It all, at the end of the day, is the difference between your retailer being able to pay Jenna. It's the difference between Miss Jen being able to pay Jenna and not being able to pay Jenna. It's the difference between me as a retailer being able to buy Subway for dinner or eating ramen. And I think you'll agree there's not a big difference in quality between Subway and Top Ramen. They're both pretty bad at what they are. So at the end of the day, when you look at your local comic shop, think about all the places where their money is going and you don't think about it. Ignore the shelves. Does your retailer have air conditioning? Does it have heat? Do the lights all work? Do they have music playing? Do they let you pay with a credit card, or do you have to pay cash? All of those things have a fixed cost, or have a cost related to them that your retailer also has to pay. So on top of paying for all of that new product you're looking at in your shopping, they're having to make extra money to cover everything else. So is it worth it to you now to ask them for an extra $5 discount? Or is it worth it for them to be there next week? We're going to take our last phone calls on this when we come back from this break. We're going to take another break. But before we do, I want to remind you guys on Wednesday, we have two of our newest shows here on The Experience. They started a week apart. 360 Comics. Joe is new here and is just getting his legs under him and is doing a great job here with 360 Comics. And 3T Triple T Talking Treats Trivia with Chuck Pino and Wendy. They will have a guest on, an interview, and ask you trivia questions. So if you enjoyed Jenna's show before this, if you enjoyed General Disorder, imagine that show, but with a comic book creator and prizes at the end. More prizes at the end. It's not that Jenna doesn't give you a prize. More prizes at the end. That's Wednesday starting at 8 and 9, respectively. Triple T is at 8 and 360 is at 9. Here on The Experience, all of that is followed by Kicking It with Henri, who you can make fun of for being as bald as I am. Tune in Wednesday night and check out those shows. So we'll be right back after these messages.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com to find a store near you.
All right, guys, welcome back to Hot Takes. I am producer Kyle. This has been the show. We didn't answer anything, really. We didn't solve the comic book industry. We're not gonna here on this show. We're gonna ask questions, and we're all gonna become better fans and better participants in the comic industry by asking the questions and talking to each other about what it means. I still don't believe that it's right for a person to ask a comic shop to give a discount. If they offer one, great. Like Jenna said, their store offers discounts for vets and first responders and, a bunch of different reasons. My store, we offered subscription discounts. We offered discounts to local school kids, the Boy Scouts, things like that, in order to encourage reading. But just to go in and ask a guy to make less money. Jenna, the reason we're talking about this is that Diamond announced a 40% discount on their shipping as they cut their operation costs. Other people are adding more to shipping too, but in association with rising costs of shipping. Diamond was the only one who didn't mention trying to negotiate with UPS or FedEx for better rates. Everybody else did. If gas costs more, shipping is going to cost more. But Diamond was adding at least 40% on top to cover the cost of the electricity in their many, many offices. I don't think it's right to go in and ask a guy just to make less money. I think if it's, hey, we're a few dollars apart here or there, it's fair to say, hey, look, I want to buy this $50 book. Can you give it to me at $47? Because then I got $8 in my pocket. I can go next door and buy a sandwich. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think asking a store what kind of discounts they offer, military, police, fire. And that's what Ed's saying. He had a membership at his old LCS, so he never asked for discounts either because his membership gave him 20% off. Right. That's what I'm saying. If someone's willing to offer you something, take advantage of it. But I think it's important to remember that the comic book industry and comic book retail as a whole is not a simple business. I mentioned earlier fixed cost models. When you know what something costs, you can budget and build in revenue to cover that cost and to cover all your other bills. When you don't know what something is going to cost, you can't. The comic book industry has very few fixed cost propositions. Everything's prices are changing. Comic books are getting more expensive. Shipping is getting more expensive. Rent, utilities, employee salaries have to go up. Things are constantly changing. And if you don't consider that when you go in to buy a book, when you go into a store to consider, if you don't consider that when you go in to think about how you're going to approach your buying habits, you're doing your comic shop a disservice. Now, again, I'm not saying your comic shop isn't going to offer you something. I'm not saying that your comic shop needs your help, but your comic shop needs your help. The difference between buying a Batman and not buying a Batman isn't, will my store give me 10% off? But the difference between your comic shop being open and not being open is how many people ask for that 10% off. If you're not considering what it costs to run a comic shop when you're shopping, or what it costs to run any store you're shopping in, then you're doing a disservice to that store. You just are. And again, you have to make decisions based on your budget and your life. Hey, I can afford this or I can't. And if you can't afford it, no one is going to be angry at you for not being able to afford something. But before you go up to the counter and say, hey, here's my Krang special second printing, what's the best you can do on this? Think about all the things where they're already doing the best they can do. And think about whether or not that $5 is going to make a difference for you. Because if everybody spent $5 more at their local comic shop, there'd be a hell of a lot more local comic shops out there. Thanks for watching.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.